India formally begins its G20 presidency from today, and it's going to be an exciting year. At least 200 meetings are lined up over the full year, and of course it will culminate in the summit in September 2023. Our focus is going to be on forging unity in a group that has disparate views, and honestly not everyone's getting along right now within the G20. It's also in the backdrop of a really tough time globally. The Ukraine-Russia war rages on. A lot of countries in the world are looking at a recession, and some are already in a recessionary phase, and India has its task cut out for it. Now, leading India's mission, in a sense, will be the G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant. I'm speaking with him today. Mr. Kant, thank you so much for speaking with us on ET Now. Let me begin by talking about some of the challenges I mentioned in my opening comments. This is indeed an exciting, interesting and challenging year for India to take on the presidency of the G20, isn't it?
Absolutely. So these are very challenging times. There's a looming crisis of slowdown of global growth, recession in many parts of the world. The post-COVID era has seen 200 million people getting in below the poverty line. 100 million people have lost their jobs. There is a huge breakdown of global supply chain. Almost 70 countries are facing a global debt crisis. There's a challenge of climate finance, climate action, all this. There are challenges of fuel, food, fertilizer, and therefore the world is full of turmoil. But every challenge is an opportunity, and great leadership comes at the point of crisis, and therefore my view is that India has its huge opportunity to really bring consensus amongst all the countries, demonstrate its leadership ability, and as the Prime Minister has said, show that India is very action-oriented, it's reform-oriented, it's decisive, and it will take the G20 movement forward in a very positive and a very constructive manner.
You know, Mr. Kant, for a long time there has been debate and there have been questions over how much the G20 really matters, the efficacy of this body of nations, what does it really do? And considering that it came into being in the backdrop of another crisis in 2008, do you think this is the time to really show that this grouping matters, they can make a difference?
So, Tamanna, the challenge is that the United Nations is too large a body. It's got 186 members, too unwieldy a body. G7 is really comprising of very few developed nations of the world. Many of the challenges come from different parts of the world. So, in 2008, when actually it started much earlier in 1999, but when 2008 it was taken to the leaders level and expanded. Since then the G20 has taken several measures. It's you know, in 2008 crisis was handled by a huge package which came out of the G20 in the London summit. You've had the Basel III norms coming out of here. You've had the Fiscal Stability Board coming out from here. You had the you know, the global debt solution, the recapitalization of IMF, a vast number of initiatives have come out from G20 based on global consensus to drive growth. And if there is any body or any forum which comprises of both developed and developing nations, which can, where leadership can be demonstrated to drive growth, progress, and to take care of the citizens of the world, it is G20. There's no other body in the world today because the emerging market share is growing, the developed market share is coming down, and you need to put both of them together to drive the world. And it's not just about what decisions they are taken, but also about leaders meeting, discussing, solving many of the challenges of today's world. That itself is a huge, huge plus for G20.
So, Prime Minister Modi in Bali said that India's presidency will be inclusive, ambitious, decisive and growth-oriented. You've mentioned, Mr. Kant, some of the real tangible outcomes of G20 in the past. What will be the aim during India's presidency? And there's no dearth of things to pick from. If there can be some solution to the Ukraine-Russia war, if there can be some solution to actually getting, the push towards stopping climate change, there's a lot that we can choose from. What do you think the focus will be?
So the Prime Minister has spoken at length on this at Bali. He's dwelt at length in his editorial in many papers today. Broadly, one is that in the present context, it has to be inclusive, resilient and sustainable growth over a long period of time. There has to be, we have to take care of the citizens, so the segment that have fallen behind in terms of education outcomes, health outcomes, nutrition, about taking SDGs along because we are midway through the 2030 agenda. There's the challenge of climate action and finance, which needs to be discussed. If you need to bring SDG and climate finance packaging, then you need to reform the multilateral institutions of today, which were formed post-World War II during the Bretton Woods regime, and they've outlived their utility. So you need to do more of blended finance, you need to do more of credit enhancement, you need to do more of first loss guarantees, etc. All this would require a huge reform in the multilateral finance institutions. But one critical thing that the Prime Minister has spoken about is food and fuel security. He's also spoken about global debt. And I think the key emphasis that he's laid is on digital transformation of the world as well as women-led development. And both of these are very critical to our mind. They bring in along with the priorities of the world, they also bring in a huge India narrative of what India has done in the past.
So, coming back to the point of, and I'm putting it in very simplistic words, but this is a G20 where most don't get along with each other. You have the dragon in the room, China, and of course, India is dealing with this situation. Right now, you have the UK, who's made a very strong statement about China and the protests going on there. Then you have Russia as a part of this G20, and we know the issues there. The whole group is sort of divided on an approach to Russia. How do you navigate this kind of a disparate group to ensure that there is some real tangible outcome?
Okay, so good question. And we'd seen this similar kind of challenge or even a worse scenario in Indonesia, where all meetings had failed. There were no consensus in over many ministerial meetings, but eventually the huge amount of discussion took place at Bali, and all leaders, everyone came together. India played a key role at Bali with all Sherpas getting together of emerging markets. That's India, Brazil, South Africa, Mexico, Argentina. We all helped together to bring a consensus. Our argument was that G20 is not a forum for political issues. That's the UN Security Council. G20 is essentially a body for economic growth and financial progress. The G7's argument that it has huge implications in terms of a war, has huge implication in terms of fuel, food, fertilizer. But we were able to bring a consensus. The Indonesian communique which came out was fairly ambitious. It brought in consensus, and I'm sure that we'll be able to bring consensus through our positivity during India's presidency. More than that, there's the Prime Minister's own political leadership, which is important. He's demonstrated that he's a driver of growth and development. His credibility is at an all-time high. And therefore, my view is that the Prime Minister's leadership, the content preparation that we've done, We're the only country which has distributed its contents, its issue notes almost 15 days before time. And thirdly, the extent of our preparation in terms of logistics, etc., will all help us to enable a very successful presidency and to be ambitious and action oriented. So our objective is that we'll try and push through by consensus a very, very ambitious communique, but also enable leaders to really push for growth and to push for the sustainable development agenda as well.
Mr. Kant, now back to the excitement. Of course, all of this hard work you will have to do, India will have to do over the next 1 year, but this is also going to be an occasion to showcase India to the world. There are 200 meetings. They're going to be in different parts of the country. Tell us about what this means for India.
Well, the important thing is that first, ensure that every visitor, every tourist who comes goes back as a brand ambassador of India. Secondly, whatever we do, we should showcase the work that we've done in terms of development, in terms of roads, electricity, housing, etc. Tell them the huge transformation that has taken place due to the digital public good infrastructure that India has created. That's a path-breaking story of digital identification, fast payments. It's a story of digital empowerment of the citizens and our ability to ensure that many citizens are lifted above poverty line by sheer direct benefit transfer. Secondly, I think it's also a huge story of India's development being driven by women. What India has done as a health pharmacy of the world, as a vaccine capital of the world, and lastly, that India is the mother of all democracy. All this, the soft power of India, the hard power of India, all has to blend together to create a very, very unique experience of India. That is what we'll strive to do as we take India's presidency to over 200 different meetings in 55 cities of India. Every state will work with us. Every state is presently working with us, coordinating with us, cooperating with us. We are trying to create an experience which is culturally elevating, spiritually invigorating, and mentally rejuvenating for every single visitor who comes and who participates in these meetings.
Is there an assessment on the number of tourists expected or the tourism revenue that could be generated and how we can ensure that after a lull, you know, Indian tourism also kicks off thanks to the G20 presidency?
Well, you know, it's not the numbers who come, but the people who come will be really unique. So you'll have the Sherpas, you'll have the ministers, you'll have the leaders, you'll have many, many intellectuals, all of them. It's the word of mouth, it's the multiplier impact, it's the social media, and therefore it's important that we are able to demonstrate the cultural experiences of the states, take them around to our cultural sites as well in their excursion, and really demonstrate the India story to them. While our job is to build consensus around a vast range of issues, our job will also be to ensure that travel and tourism has a big impact. So I'm quite sure with the G20, there'll be word of mouth, there'll be massive photo opportunities. All this will have a huge multiplier impact as far as travel and tourism for the years to come will be.
Absolutely. It's going to be an exciting presidency. Thank you so much, Mr. Kant, for speaking with us today and sort of sharing India's journey as we kickstart the G20 presidency for this year.
Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated.